Welcome to part two in our segment related to Islamic art and architecture in West and Central Asia. Most cities with a sizable Muslim populations possess a primarily congregational mosque. Diverse in design and dimensions, they can illustrate the style of period or geographic region, the choice of the patron, and the expertise of the architect. So we have seen that, and so with mosque architecture in particular, there isn't really a set. I mean, there's certain features, but they also, architectural features, but they're also, because of the geographic location and the time period, often will make adaptations. And so all the mosques that we have looked at will look very different. Um, Congressional mosques are often expanded in conjunction with the growth and needs of the Muslim community. However, it is uncommon for such expansion and modification to continue over a span of 1,000 years. The Great Mosque of Isfahan in Iran is unique in this regard and thus enjoys a special place in the history of Islamic architecture. Its present configuration is the sum of building and decorating activities carried out from the 8th through the 20th centuries. It is an architectural documentary visually embodying the political character and aesthetic taste of the great Islamic Empire of Persia. Distinctive aspect of the mosque is its urban integration. Positioned at the center of the old city, the mosque shares walls with other buildings abutting its perimeter. Due to its immense size and its numerous entrances, all except one inaccessible now, it formed a pedestrian hub connecting the arterial network of paths crisscrossing the city. Far from being an insular sacred monument, the mosque facilitated public mobility and commercial activity, thus transcending its principal function as a place for prayer alone. So you can see here, this is the street view of the Grand Bazaar of Isfahan with the great mosque dome in the distance. So here's the floor plan. The mosque's core structure dates primarily from the 11th century when the Seljuk Turks established Isfahan as their capital. Additions and alterations were made during the Second Khaganate. Turmurid Safid, who was a Khwaja, and I'm mispronouncing all of these, um, some sort of rule. An earlier mosque with a singular inner courtyard already existed on the current location. Under the reign of Malik Shah I, who ruled from 1072 to 1092, and his immediate successors, the mosque grew to its current four Iwan design. Indeed, the Great Mosque of Isfahan is considered the prototype for future four Iwan, and this is spelled W-I-W-A-N mosques. And so an Iwan is a vaulted space that opens on one side of the courtyard. So that's some vocabulary that we need to learn. Here is the floor plan and then an aerial view. Linking the four Iwans at the center is a large courtyard open to the air, which provides a tranquil space for from the hustle and bustle of the city. Brick piers and columns support the roofing system and allow prayer halls to extend away from the central courtyard on each side. Aerial photographs of the building provide an interesting view. The mosque's roof has the appearance of bubble wrap formed through this sort of pattern of unusual but charming domes crowning the hypostyle interior. So it does kind of look like bubble wrap. And again, a hypostyle hall is, many columns, so you can kind of see here in the different sort of prayer halls here. This simplicity of the earth-colored exterior really speaks to the complexity of the internal decor. So while the exterior seems very simple, it's the internal decor that really has this sort of sumptuous, tile work and sort of these design motifs. Dome soffits, or this is a term soffits, these are the undersides of domes, are crafted in varied geometric designs and often include an oculus, a circular opening to the sky. Vaults, sometimes ribbed, offer lighting and ventilation to an otherwise dark space. Creative arrangement of bricks, intricate motifs in stucco, and sumptuous tile work, later additions, which were later additions, harmonize the interior while simultaneously delighting the viewer at every turn. In this manner, movement within the mosque becomes a journey of discovery and a stroll across time. Given its sprawling expanse, one can imagine how difficult it would be to locate the correct direction for prayer. The Qibla Awan on the southern side of the courtyard solves this conundrum. It is the only one flanked by two cylindrical minarets and also serves as the entrance to one of two large dome chambers within the mosque. Similar um, to its three counterparts, this Iwan sports colorful tile decoration, yukarnas, or traditional Islamic cusp niches. These are sort of these decorations that are done in stucco, very finely carved. The domed interior was reserved for the use of the ruler and gives access to the main mihrab of the mosque, which you can see a view of that here. And so here is a close-up, a more detailed view, and you can see the muqarnas, this sort of decoration and inlay work. It's quite spectacular. The second domed room lies on a longitudinal axis right across the double arcaded courtyard. This opposite placement and varied decoration underscores the political enmity between the respective patrons. So remember this, this is a structure that has been expanded over 1,000 years. And so within each dome, there's this idea that through, these different advisors and administrators to whoever was ruling would commemorate these domes and through position and architectural articulation and the decorative program would try to vie for primacy and position. So this is a dome. This is the interior decoration of Taj al-Mulk, which is the North Dome. Um, so I'm going to go back to this one. Um, Nazim al-Mulk was a vizier or some sort of administrator to Malik Shah I. He commissioned the Qibla Dome in 1086, um, which I think is what we're sort of looking at here. But a year later, he fell out of favor with the ruler and Taj al-Mulk. His nemesis, with support from female members of the court, quickly replaced him, and the new vizier's dome, which is what this is, built in 1088, is smaller but considered a masterpiece of proportion. And again, you can really see that beautiful muqarnas, that stucco work is absolutely gorgeous. All right, so when Shah Abbas I, a Safavid dynasty ruler, decided to move the capital of his empire from Qazvin to Isfahan in the late 16th century, he crafted a completely new imperial and mercantile center away from the old Seljuk city, while the new square and its adjoining buildings, renowned for their exquisite decorations, renewed Isfahan's prestige among the earlier modern cities of the world. The significance of the Seljuk mosque and its influence on the population was not forgotten. This link amongst the political, commercial, social, and religious activities is nowhere more emphasized than the architectural layout of Isfahan's covered bazaar. Its massive brick vaulting and lengthy, sinuous routes connects the Safa Eid center to the city's ancient heart, the great mosque of Ish the Han. So again, here's that picture I showed you of that sort of bazaar. And excuse me, the courtyard of the Great Mosque. All right, so we're going to move away from architecture and look at some Islamic calligraphy. One of the things that is very distinctive about Islam compared to Christianity is that Islam was a very, at least at the time, and particularly in medieval times, is very literate culture, and writing was a really important component. So with sacred architecture like mosques, we don't really see a lot of figurative depictions. We see all this beautiful calligraphy, where when we get back into looking at Christian medieval church architecture, we'll see sort of the opposite. We'll see pictures and depictions of Christ, and because the worshipers could not read. Um, so what you're looking at is a fragment from the Quran in Arabic before 9/11. This was done on vellum. The Quran is the sacred text of Islam, consisting of the divine revelation to the Prophet Muhammad in Arabic. Over the course of the first century and half of Islam, the form of the manuscript was adapted to suit the dignity and splendor of this divine revelation. However, the word Quran, which means recitation, suggests that the manuscripts were of secondary importance to the oral tradition. In fact, the 114 surahs, or chapters of the Quran, were compiled into a textual format, organized from longest to shortest only after the death of Muhammad, although scholars still debate exactly when this might have occurred. So this two-page spread or bifolium of a Quran manuscript, which contains the beginning of the Surat al-Ankabut, if this translates into the spider, is now in the collection of the Morgan Library and Museum in New York. Other folios that appear to be from the same Quran survive in the Chester Library in Dublin, and some other libraries all over the world. I'm not going to name all of them. um, um, so let me move on. Here's a closer, more detailed of one of the pages. The main text of the Mushaf, Mushaf, um, as manuscripts of the Quran are known, is written in brown ink. Arabic, the language of the divine word of Islam, is read from right to left. Several consonants share the same basic letter form, and these are usually distinguished from each other by lines or dots placed above or below the letter. Short vowels such as A, U, and I are not normally written in Arabic, but in order to avoid misreadings of such an important text, it quickly became standard to include the vowels in the Quran. In this manuscript, the short vowels are marked with red circles positioned above, next to, or below the consonants, depending on the vowel. Here's an even more detailed of the text. The text of each surah is further divided into verses by triangles made up of 5 gold circles, which are circled in white, located at the end of each verse. The title of each surah is written in gold ink and surrounded by a rectangle filled with an undulating golden vine, combined with rounded a palmette extending into the margin of the folio. It allows readers to quickly locate the beginning of each surah. So I'm sorry, this is the image of that, the sort of, yeah, the rectangle filled with the golden vine. So this kind of is like a marker, and allows worshipers to kind of find the chapter quickly. Because figural imagery such as human or animal forms was considered inappropriate for the ornamentation of sacred religious monuments and objects, artists relied on vegetal and geometric motifs when they decorated mosques and sacred manuscripts. vines, and palmettes, like the ones that surround the surah here, and the heading that we're looking at, appear alone in sacred context, but they also accompanied animal and human forms in secular decorations of palaces and textiles. So here we just, with the sacred text of the Quran, we just see calligraphy and these sort of vegetal and geometric motifs combined. The art of producing a mushaf, or this page, began well before a pen was even dipped into ink. The dimensions of each page was calculated before the parchment was cut, and the text was carefully situated relative to the edges of the page. Each page of costly parchment or vellum in this Quran is larger than a standard sheet of printed paper and contains only 9 lines of calligraphy. These materials suggest both the dignity of the sacred text and the wealth of its patron, who was probably a member of the aristocratic elite. So again, medieval manuscripts such as this, really were luxury items. So like in today's world, like it would be like a sports car or owning something, a really expensive piece of jewelry, or like a fashioned, like a high, couture dress, fashion dress, or something like that. In addition to the high quality and large quantity of materials used, the deliberate geometric planning of the page conveys the importance of the text that it contains. As in many of the mushafs produced between 750 and 1000 CE, the pages of this manuscript are wider than they are tall. Text block of this manuscript has a height to width ratio of 2 to 3, and the width of the text block is approximately equal to the height of the page. So again, there's that geometry. The height of each line of text was derived from the first letter of the alphabet, Aleph, A-L-I-F, which was in turn derived from the width of the nib of the reed pen used by calligraphers to write the text. So again, this is a very, very complex um, form of writing. Each line was further divided into a set number of interlines, which were used to determine the height of various parts of the individual letters. And so these sort of white lines are kind of helping you visualize that. There is no ruling on the parchment, however, there wasn't any ruling, so scribes probably placed each sheet of semi-transparent parchment on a board marked with horizontal guidelines as they wrote. You can sort of think about this. I don't know if they still teach cursive writing. In grade school, they would teach us cursive writing, and you would write on this sort of ruled paper. Sort of a similar idea. Mesmerizing and producing the proportions of each pen stroke, however, must have been part of the training of every scribe. Here's an example of another text. This is done in gold ink. Writing in the 10th century CE, the Abbaside court secretary Ibn Durastuya noted that letters of the alphabet were written differently by Karnak scribes, professional secretaries, and other copyists. The calligraphic style used by these early scribes of the Quran is known today as Kufric. So this is what we're looking at, Kufric script. Only 2 or 3 of the more than 1,300 fragments and manuscripts written in Kufric that survive contained non-Quranic content. Kufric is not so much a single type of handwriting as it is a family of 17 related style based on common principles, including preference for strokes of relativity, uniform thickness, short straight vertical lines, and long horizontal lines, and a straight horizontal baseline. Various types of Kufic were popular from the 7th century until the late 10th century. Scribes used a wide reed pen dipped in ink to write, and some letters the angle of the pen was adjusted as the scribe wrote in order to maintain an even thickness through the entire letter form, but in others the angle could be held constant in order to produce both very thick and thin lines. Although letters and even entire words at first appear to consist of a single stroke of the pen. In fact, the individual letters were often formed using multiple strokes. So we'll get back to this. The regulatory and precision of the penmanship in the fragment from the Morgan Library that we were looking at earlier and looking at now, reveals the skill of the scribe who produced it, each of them deliberately imitating a single style in order to produce a unified finished product. Scribes also had some freedom in composing a page. They could emphasize, sorry about that. They could emphasize individual words and balance the width of lines of different length by elongating certain letters horizontally, a technique known as masha, M-A-S-H-Q. They could also adjust spacing between words and letters and even split words between two lines in order to balance positive and negative space across the page. So it's not even just the text and the line and the mark making, but also the space in between that was really important and part of this artistic expression. In this Musshaf, the space between the non-connecting characters within a word are as wide as the space that separates different words, sometimes even wider. For readers unfamiliar with the text, it is therefore difficult to figure out which letters should be grouped together to form words. This deliberate sort of mysterious way of sort of showing these letters would have slowed down the reader, and it suggests that anyone who read aloud from these manuscripts had probably already memorized the text of the Quran and used the lavish manuscript only as a kind of I can't say that word, mnemonic device. Okay. So anyway, I am going to stop here. We do have some more to look at. We're going to be looking at some sculpture and some textiles, hopefully in our next unit. So stay tuned.